In my earlier video, I noted the important role the law of non-contradiction plays in evaluating conflicting worldviews. Any worldview that fails the test of reason, that is logically incoherent, must be false. In this video, I want to explain what the law of non-contradiction is and why accepting it is a matter of necessity, not of choice. Striving for logical consistency is not an option. The law of non-contradiction is not a principle we may or may not observe. It is an unavoidable principle of thinking, communicating, and speaking. According to Aristotle, the laws of logic are not simply principles of human thinking, because they are also laws of being. We may use them to grasp the logical structure of the world. The law of non-contradiction is a necessary principle of thought because it is first a necessary principle of being. Perhaps the simplest definition of the law of non-contradiction is this: A cannot be both B and non-B at the same time and in the same sense. Aristotle's way of saying this is worth noting. He writes that the same attribute cannot at the same time belong and not belong to the same subject in the same respect. In another passage, he puts it this way: it is impossible that contrary attributes should belong at the same time to the same subject. In this formulation, the letters A and B are variables. All we have to do is to use the variables properly, is to substitute for them consistently. When we do this properly, we end up with the proposition like an object A cannot be both round, B, and square, non-B, at the same time in the same sense. Or A proposition A cannot be both true, B, and false, non-B, at the same time in the same sense. One reason why so many people fail to see the necessity of the law of non-contradiction is their failure to grasp the inescapable distinction between B and non-B. One helpful way to see this distinction is the following square, in which I have located the terms B and non-B. Let us suppose that the larger box, non-B, represents the entire universe in the sense that if anything, call it X, Y, and Z, exists, it exists inside the box. Our larger box contains a smaller box that is marked B. This smaller box represents some class or group or a set of things that have something essential in common. Hence, B could represent the class of all cats, or all horses, or all fish or human beings. Non-B, the bigger box, is what we call the complementary class of B. This means that if, for example, the box we have called B represents the class of all cats, then non-B stands for everything else in the universe that is not a cat. The complementary class of non-B includes dogs, birds, elephants, you, me, Mount Everest, the moon. In short, anything in the universe that is something other than a cat. If B represents the class of all human beings, then non-B would include everything in the universe that is not a human. All that the law of non-contradiction says is this: if anything, call it X, Y, and Z, is a member of the class we have called B, then X, Y, and Z cannot under any condition also, at the same time and in the same sense, be a member of the complementary class of non-B. Consider an example. Is it impossible for Socrates to be both man and non-man? Since the class of non-man is the complement of the class of man, the claim that Socrates is also a member of the class of non-B, non-man, is tantamount to saying that Socrates is not only a human, but also everything else in the universe. Thus, anyone who claims that Socrates can be both man and non-man is saying that Socrates can be a dog, a cat, and indeed everything else in the universe at the same time. Philosopher Gordon H. Clark outlines the implications of this. If contradictory statements are true of the same subject at the same time, evidently all things will be the same thing. Socrates will be a ship, a house, as well as a man. But if precisely the same attributes attach to Crito that attach to Socrates, it follows that Socrates is Crito. Not only so, but the ship in the harbor, since it has the same list of attributes too, will be identified with this Socrates Crito person. In fact, everything will be the same thing. All differences among things will vanish, and all will be one. There is no quicker way to become swallowed up in a nonsense than to deny the distinction between B and non-B. I once heard a story of a young man who was called into the income tax office for an audit. The reason for his troubles was his failure to file his tax returns for a couple of years. When asked by the agent why he had failed to file his taxes, the young man replied that in college he had learned that the law of non-contradiction is an optional, non-necessary principle. Once he had learned that there is no difference between B and non-B, it was only a matter of time before he realized that no difference exists between filing a tax and not filing his tax return. "That's very interesting," said the agent. "I've never heard that one before. Since you believe that there is no difference that exists between B and non-B, I'm sure you also believe that there is no difference between being in jail and not being in jail." In our next video, we shall look at whether the law of non-contradiction can be proven. If you have enjoyed this series, then please subscribe and follow. And if you have any questions, feel free to post in the comments section,